Welcome to our series, America is a Business and We Are the Price to Pay. Part 4, Prisons and Privacy. When our right to freedom is cashed in for profit. When we turn human rights into profit-centered businesses, we create a race to the bottom for all of us. In the case of private prisons, freedom becomes a cost to be cut, where more incarceration equals higher profits. This is also true when businesses are allowed to tap into cheap prison labor, even in nonprofit prisons, to help cut their bottom line and boost their revenue. In the digital world, our privacy is harvested as data capital, turning our personal lives into a product for sale. When the bottom line outweighs the human soul, we cash in our fundamental right to freedom. So, on that note, what's got you up and what's got you down? Rachel, you want to lead us?
Sure. Well, let's see what's got me up. The I've been really enjoying this cooler weather. I do miss the living on the East Coast for that reason. I used to make fun of LA and call it a one-trick pony. The weather when I first got here because I was a salty New Yorker. Um, I do get used to the one-trick ponying. It is nice, but once in a while it's good to have a little cool little reprieve, especially when I'm exercising outside. So that's good. I've been, taking in the nature, taking in the difference of weather. Down, what's got me down? My mom's going through some transitions in her life, some letting go and releasing. So that's been hard because she is a little older. It can be, challenging, right? But I've been supportive, and it's not great to see when your parent is having a hard time with letting go and doing some of sort of life's evolution. I'm happy that she's here and that I can be with her. What about you, Robin?
Okay, so what's got me up? I'm still on the school countdown to summer. Although that means I have to think about all the things that I have to do for the kids for the summer and how much food they're going to eat. And in this economy, I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited to spend some more time with my babies. What's got me down? Tennessee, Louisiana, Alabama, soon to be Georgia.
Hmm.
All of that is just so
Yes.
exhausting, but I'm also very encouraged because I know that there's so many people who know that we need to fight back. And the more exposure to that's where it counts the most. What about you,
Mm.
Julie?
I guess I'm feeling pretty good right now. What's got me down is I just say ditto, right, to that, just what's going on in the world and the way humans are treating humans. But what's got me up is this is a weird one. My girls are home today. One of them's not feeling well, and so I wasn't able to get out with the other one to get her to school because the other one can't travel, and so they're relaxing in the other room. It actually has kind of got me up. There's just some comfort
Oh,
in knowing your babies are safe, and when they're with you,
yeah.
you know that.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
that's really relatable. When my kiddo isn't feeling well, I'm very quick to be like, "You want to stay home? What? I work from home. You want to stay home?" And like it makes me work faster. I appreciate that. I appreciate that moment too with him.
Forward to summer for that reason.
Mm.
For sure, for sure. On to the topic.
The reason we're doing this is also for our babies. You hear a lot of times where people talk about, why are you talking about politics? You're not qualified. And I'm curious what people mean by that when they say
Mm.
people aren't qualified. Just because somebody in their life might be an artist or a business person in some form doesn't mean that they also don't study and pay attention to politics, or let's just simply say feel what's going on in the
Hmm.
country and know that things are not just or right. And so we're doing this for our babies too, and for all those other babies out there. And so even
100%.
topics like we're talking about today, which are prisons and privacy, these affect our children. And right now in our country, prisons are profit making machines. And while they're meant to be something that's supposed to protect us, they're actually being utilized also as a way to generate revenue. And we, as citizens of the United States, are meant to be in the land of free, but yet 20% of all the world's prisoners are in the United States. And so we're going to start off by talking about how do we as a country compare to the rest of the world in this way. Rachel, you want to lead us off?
Sure. I mean, that's a staggering statistic to me. And when I think about how America incarcerates people at about 5 times the rate of
Mhm.
it really helps me focus in on the fact that there's so many systemic issues at play in that stat alone, right? There's racism going on, definitely in that stat. There's profit making going on in that stat. The imbalance is crazy. It's wild work to me. And also that 70 something percent, I think it's like 71% of the prisoners will return to prison within 5 years, which is also leads to like there is no rehabilitation. Like I don't the goal of prison is to teach you your lesson, right? And the idea is that you would not want to come back. But when you look into our jail systems, there is no rehabilitation. Is the goal to have you go back to prison and then continue and generate this profit, these major profits. The privatization of jails, and it is it is pretty outrageous. What are your thoughts, Robin?
I mean, I think you brought up some great stats, and we know what society is creating this pipeline for, and to basically have a legal loophole to have slavery. And I'm staying on topic, but going off a topic. Recently, I saw highlights from a trial, and it was a serious offense, and they were describing the person that they were sending to jail, and it sounded like a slave auction. They were talking about his size and him being young and how he could help, contribute because the prison populations were aging out. And so that tells you a lot. And of course, he was a black young man. That tells you a lot about how this country sees us. When you really think about what we've been working on with all these parts, it kind of makes you sick to your stomach about what this country really is and what it has been. A lot of times people talk about, like in Finland, how it's like people are so happy there. And when you compare us to Finland, it's actually quite staggering. As of early 2024, Finland has one of the lowest incarcerations in the world. It's approximately 54 to 57 prisoners per 100,000 people, and a recidivism rate of 36 to 60% in comparison to us. That is absolutely insane, and more people should be upset. So,
Yeah, 500 Americans out of 100,000 are in prison, and to Rachel's point, China has more people than us, so we can't say it has something to do with scale. We're only
Mm.
fifth in the world as far as prisoners, the number of prisoners we have, right? And we have more than Russia as well. And you look at our Canadian neighbors right next door; they
Yeah.
have only 88 to 100,000. You know, it's meant to hold people that are a threat to greater society, right? And these are a lot of complex issues, right? We're not talking about wanting to have violent offenders, people who have sexually molested children or sexually assaulted women in society doing more harm. That's not what we're talking about here. But what we are talking about is who is in prison. Why do we have so many people in prison? And what is the outcome for those people and our society by doing that? And what is the outcome for those who are gaining from it? According to the United States Sentencing Commission in 2024, the average sentence in the United States for individuals trafficking marijuana was 3 years and 1 month. So that's just trafficking marijuana. We're not talking about violence. And the selling of certain amounts of marijuana for adult recreational use has been legalized in 24 states, 2 territories, and the District of Columbia. So there's some clear indicators that we don't really think it's the threat that they thought it was during the war on drugs. We also recognize that it's not a violent crime and that there is financial incentive for imprisoning people for nonviolent crimes. So, what are these financial incentives, Rachel?
So Black Americans in the United States make up a roughly around 13% of the population, more or less, right? And hold 38% of the federal prison population. So
Yes.
they are incarcerated at significantly higher rates than white Americans. And Black men historically have faced some of the highest in prison rates in our country. With that, I think there needs to be a reduction. We need to remove profit incentives from prison, right? We need to focus on rehabilitation, not just punishment. There has to be some sort of model that we can use that sort of looks at Norway and Finland, so they don't have these such high return rates. And what are we doing when they are in prison? Like, we're so focused on the profit making, but improving mental health and reentry support, I think that needs to be the focus. I'm just wondering, how do we focus from the profit onto education, therapy, job training? How can we, what do you ladies think? I mean, like, how can we shift that? What needs to happen?
Mhm.
The going up against profit it feels insurmountable.
Definitely. And I think that this country is so motivated by money. I mean, we are a perfect walking example of how money can ruin people's lives, but it can also be so corrupt, because if
Yeah.
you are comfortable taking on a prison because you get to be a multi-millionaire, it's very disturbing. And to think about the fact that
Yeah.
these prisoners are getting paid pennies on the dollar, while the companies behind it are making millions upon millions, is enough to turn, your stomach. Um, because I think I grew up thinking about prison as just this bad place for all the bad people go, but when you peel back the layers, it's actually so much more complex than I think a lot of people understand. So yeah, what about you, Julie? I'm gonna pass it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I found a quote I want to read from the Office of Justice Programs. In the event that the government requests considerably more imprisonment services than planned, the contractor's opportunities for profit increase substantially if the contract obligates the government to pay the full per diem for these high numbers of prisoners' days consumed. So this is a report, and we're going to have a lot of links to this information in our fact forms if people want to email us to ask for it. And these are all very legitimate sources or government sources. So I feel like if we're paying people in prison a a minimum wage at the very least that they could then save, or I wouldn't even say that. They should be paying them what they would pay for anybody else to do that work,
Right.
because then it takes away the profit incentive, or taking away the high cost for telephone calls or commissary goods. um, that peels back that profit incentive for both the nonprofits and corporations, both for corporations trying to hire prisoners, but also prisons using prisoners as their workforce and paying them like 12 cents to 52 cents rather than hiring somebody to come in and do the work for a livable wage.
Mm.
It's anytime you have something, whether it's clean air or education or prison, anything that is affecting someone's whole being, their livelihood, I don't think profit should ever be tied to that. And I feel like that segues us right into, how does this profit making incentive directly affect how our laws are drafted around all of our rights of freedom and due process, and the ability for those who leave prison to rebuild their lives? This doesn't just affect prisoners. Where goes one goes all. When we are thinking about how we treat humans, we should be thinking about best intentions for everyone, because when we don't do that, we're affecting all of us. This isn't like just the bad guy gets it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are your thoughts about how this affects our laws and the prisoners' abilities to rebuild their lives and make a better society for all of us?
Well, I would when you brought that up, I thought about how in California prisoners help with wildlife disasters and
Mm,
responses, right? And how they have this sort of program set up in prisons. I know when we had those terrible fires here throughout recent history, they go through job training, right? They come out, they fight these fires. It On the surface, it seems like this is a one way, right? One way of like job career training kind of support programs. But when it almost reminds me of when our veterans come home, like what supports are put in place for them, and where is our tax money being allocated? because it doesn't seem like it's being allocated to these rehabilitation and career training type programs. Also, like mental health and addiction counseling, these things are severely underfunded. We all know what needs to be done, right? We all know there needs to be job placement, career training, transitional housing, reentry support, legal aid services, all of these things. But most of the time, that stuff is funded by nonprofits, and I'm wondering why not? Why can't we have our tax money allocated? And when I think about taxes, when I was living in Europe, I was living in France, and when you pay taxes, you get this long itemized list of where your taxes are exactly going. It's going here, it's going here, it's going here. It doesn't, here it's just like federal tax, but it's not telling me how you're using my tax money. Where is it going? And I find that to be extremely infuriating, because when I tell you like, oh, I know there are nonprofits that help prisoners when they get out, they help veterans when they come back home, but do we have programs, government support programs? And why don't I see that listed out? I need to have a list of where my tax money is going. Why don't I have that?
Yeah.
Pass the mic.
um this topic is man, this topic is so heavy because we all know that to be a person of color, to be a black person, to be an indigenous person, but to be a poor person, when it comes to this justice system, it is stacked against you because they know that people cannot afford to have the proper representation, and they use that to their leverage. Also, when it comes to bail bonding, they know that people usually
Mm.
can't afford or don't have people who can help bond them out of jail while they wait for a trial. I think about the gentleman Khalif Browder many years ago in New York who was frisked. He was in the stop and frisk, and he was thrown in jail. He was tortured. He was in solitary confinement. Had not had a trial. He was in there for a lengthy amount of time, and he was not guilty of anything. And when he was finally released, after all the trauma that he had experienced, he took his own life. And I watched a documentary about that years ago, and I will never forget his name. I will never forget, just for being black, that was they stole everything from him, left him with nothing, and mentally he just could not handle what he had been through. There's so many people that's their story. There's so many families that are broken, and so many people who are sitting in prisons who have not been given their just due to a proper trial. We all know that is significantly decreases the amount of opportunities that they have to put their lives back together, to be able to make money so that they don't end up back there. When you hear prisoners say it's easier to be in there than it is to be out in the public, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. And this system is just more committed to cruelty and profit for the people at top than it is about making this society better. It feels like no matter how many people are trying to fight to change that, there's way more people who just want them to sit back and let us make our money. And so I don't know
I
how
feel like
long it'll take to change that.
I feel like the government would have to lead the way on that, right? The government has to set the precedent and not have all these underfunded or inconsistent government programs that are existing. The government has to prioritize and say, okay, when you come out of prison, we we have these programs set in place. There's no access gaps, there's no barriers, there's no housing instability, right? All of that is looked at, and that rehabilitation is the priority over profit. And that can't I can't see how that will work if it's the all these nonprofits or all these smaller organizations. I think it feels, when you look at successful post prison rehabilitation in other countries, it's coming from the government. The government is setting these programs, making access, not having access gaps, and really sort of making sure that things are funded and consistent, not underfunded and inconsistent. So it is heartbreaking, because I feel like this topic is, I don't feel sometimes very very hopeful. And these are humans, right? We're talking about humans, and I'm not like Julie was saying, like obviously there are going to be times where you have people that have gone into prison for very heinous things, right? But we're
Mhm.
talking, and also they are also human, and they also deserve to have some sort of humanity, even though they have done atrocious things. Breaking them further, I'm not sure is the way.
Right. When do we then start to let the hate in our hearts take over?
Yeah.
Yeah, less money gives less access to strong legal counsel. And even with money and strong legal counsel, the lack of a desire to give people a speedy trial, the right, our constitutional right to a speedy trial,
Hmm.
is affected when profits are there. There's really no incentive. My brother was murdered, or my big brother, um, and the man who murdered him has still not gone to trial, but he's being held in jail all this time. It's a horrific thing. And I won't dive deep into it because I want to lose it. But, the people affected the most are the parents. And my father, I'm going to quote him. He said this to me at one point when we were talking: is justice delayed is justice denied, which is a quote he was, reiterating. And so even for those who have lost someone they love or have been wronged, they have to wait, you know, far too long to know that the country is a little safer because somebody who truly is a violent offender is put away. And also, like you said, those accused have a right to an expedient trial. I understand why people have a lot of anger. I get that. I get wanting revenge. I'm just not one of those people. I have forgiven him. And I know that even hearing that can hurt the hearts of people who've lost someone they love, um, because they can go, how, why? We all find our own way, whether you want the justice now for revenge or whether you just want it to make sure people are safer. Having a delayed trial is not good. And then think about the poor people who are not guilty, or it's like a non-violent crime, like that young man who was held
Hmm.
in solitary confinement for being accused of stealing something without ever having been convicted in court and taking his own life. I mean, it's just we shouldn't be treating people this way. If we have anger, if we have that kind of hate in our hearts, when then are we better than those who have done a hateful crime? And I'm not, trying to point the finger at anybody, but we've got to do better. And then once they're out, we make it exceedingly difficult for them to do better, and not go back. The halfway houses can be horrible places for people to go, and the restrictions on them, and then what we do with that they have to write it into their applications every time they apply to a job if they have a felony, and it could be a nonviolent felony, really hinders their upward mobility. And I want to talk to you guys about that. Like you had brought up, Rachel, the percentage of people that return to prison in our country, and part of that is because, again, we have no incentive if there's profit to be made. When I say we, I mean the government doesn't have any incentive because their profit making buddies and them can make money off of it. So what are some ways like we could make it better for them, including not having to say it on their application if it's not something that directly impacts their work?
It's almost like when someone gets hurt, you gotta get out the gunk to get to the new. And we really have to break down from so many levels what that means. The people who are in charge of making the decisions, that needs to be changed. Um, I've seen that some prisoners, do have some liberties that I didn't think they would have, like having a cell phone. The environment should be more conducive to living, right? Cleanliness and things such as that. Um, I think if you're going to make these people work, then you should allow them some kind of way to handle their finances. If they don't know how to manage their finances, there needs to be something in place, because the point is, for some of these people, not violent offenders, of course, we want to reiterate that continuously throughout this. There is a
Hmm.
hope that some of these people will be allowed to go back to society, especially if they were a young person who's never had a chance to get proper schooling. So there's certain life basics that we need to implement so that they can come out and have a chance, an opportunity. Um, and thank God for all these programs that are nonprofits that do come in and try to do their best to help bridge the gap. I think the incarceration rates need to be lower. And it can't be just throw them in a room, lock up the key, and walk away and say our job is done. It's safer now, because we all know there's some people who are not safe, who are constantly being let back into society and constantly doing things to get back in. What's the point where we say, okay, this isn't working? I think that you brought up so many good points, Rachel, about how there needs to be, focus on mental health. It needs to be programs to help people, because we have so many people out, just not even in prison, who are out in the streets, who have nowhere to turn to, who need mental services so that they do not end up in prison somewhere where it's not serving them, and it's just this ugly cycle that's just going around and around and around. Um,
I do have an idea. I was thinking, just from a career coaching perspective, that it would be nice to have job placement programs starting inside prison, that like an internship or apprenticeship that actually like feeds into a real employer pipeline. And then once you get out, you have these state funded like reentry centers where you're set up with someone that can help you with resume writing, interviewing, job like transferable skills training, placement support. And then when things are, sort of difficult, you have these, like, when you go and you find a job and you get laid off, that you have these centers that you can go back to maybe even work with a coach that understands like different sorts of trades that you can get into, or how you can maybe even a support program where you can have like second chance programs, right? Where you can
yeah,
offer certification programs if your pipeline started while you're in prison, right? Just like, it kind of reminds me of like what the fire department does in California. But starting job placement inside jails with internships or apprenticeships or some sort of training, whether it's online, whether it's occupational training or skills and trade training, and even offering like a certification program that shows that the employers that the prisoner was like dedicated to a certain amount of time, like a fair chance hiring standards can come into play, that they were like, okay, well, this person actually really tried, um and acquired some skills. So that's just like my two cents when I start thinking from my career coaching perspective, like starting before you get out. And then once you get out, having proper support, when like a state funded reentry job center would be ideal. In my opinion, that's a very small thing, right? But it could help.
we haven't talked about it too much, but where do we get involved before some of these uh, people get on a trajectory? Because we talk about the school to prison pipeline, and how
Mm-hmm.
there, if you really pull back, there is a system of punishment that almost sets certain youth, certainly people of color, Black people, um, on a trajectory to get them into the prison system. There's so many like blaring alarm signals going off, and that is concerning to me, because these teachers are burnt out, they're underpaid, they're aware that a lot of parents are basically allowing the school to raise their children instead of them being active. They can't read on a proper level. There are so many things that are telling us, if we don't get a hold now, the prison
Whew.
system is going to explode. AI is coming. I'm just saying, it's coming. I'm gonna take that time to pass it back to you, Julie, because yeah.
That's a whole other
Yeah,
topic. That's a
Yeah,
whole other topic, Robin.
I
Yeah.
know. I know.
It all goes back to where's why do we make the laws we make? Is it all around for profit because you don't really profit off of education, but you can profit off of prisons, that's what becomes at the forefront of the decision making? Why don't they do things like Rachel is saying where they help normalize things for prisoners for reentry, right? Like, why
Mhm.
can't they, like, you look at some of the countries that are really successful, they do education even in the prisons, right? And they try to give them as normal life as possible. They don't make them pay to talk to their loved ones. They allow them to maintain healthy relationships, which helps them with their mental health and also their reentry outside of prison. And then, they can't vote and they can't apply for a job without listing felon on their application, except for that if you're rich enough and connected enough, you can be president of the United States with a felony. But for the
Yep.
average person, that disparity doesn't allow for that.
Ooh.
And then, like you said, Robin, the, the AI race to the top is a race to the bottom for all of our privacy and freedoms. I think that's a good thing for us to talk about is this lack of control, these AI models that are massive and now they're teaching themselves. So we don't even really have a clear understanding for some of them, what are their neural networks teaching and showing themselves. And there was one where the Apollo research evaluated their AI for lying, which they call scheming, purposeful lying, like the AI reasoning out to itself to lie. We'll put a link to that too. And then we talked about the racial disparity and the face recognition systems that everybody's using. So let's talk about that for a minute. Like, how is that affecting all of our rights, Rachel?
My head's stuck on school to prison pipeline, and then you drop the felon can be a president, and now we got AI. Like I got,
It's a
That's
lot.
a lot.
It's a lot.
it's a
It's a lot.
lot. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, students of color are disproportionately disciplined in the United States, and then the AI thing. I was like, yeah, I don't know.
I think the thing about AI that has always concerned me, as much as it can be innovative, and I can see a path forward where AI can be useful. But I saw iRobot, right? So when I heard about AI, I got a little scared. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, I was very resistant because I'm just like, people already lack empathy. They lack comprehension skills. They want everything at the tip of their fingers. Remember when Amazon first came out? And at first I was like, I don't know about this, like the convenience of it. But eventually, you get pulled into it because you're like, well, I do need some markers for my kids, and if you can bring it here tomorrow, that would be amazing. Like there's something that inevitably we get pulled into because there is convenience in it. AI is one of those things. The alarm bells have always been ringing for me because I'm like, so you want AI to replace the people, but you want the people to buy the goods that keep you rich. It doesn't make sense. On top of that, they basically shove AI in our faces. I saw something for ordering pizza, y'all. I think it was like Papa John's. This AI thing can help you order for what? Like for certain people who have I can see it, right? But like to order pizza, you can't go and push pepperoni pizza, half anchovies, half green peppers on your own. You need AI to do it. Like, get out of here. Stop. It's overwhelming. So to imagine being away from society and then being pushed back out, and there's a whole new world. So AI is like maddening just for the average person. If the school to prison pipeline is concerning, right? We have kids who cannot read on the proper level and are yet getting bumped up grade to grade to grade to grade. There's a lot of stuff there, right? There's a lot of layers to that are concerning. But the fact that you kept passing this child up knowing they weren't prepared for the world, that is concerning. But when we're pouring more money into the prisons and less money into the education system, when we are hiding how the government is run, our actual history, I mean, the levels to it is insane. It's a lot, and it's hard to take a breath and
It's a
weed
lot.
through that.
Ooh.
on top of the fact that human connection is absolutely vital to us. It is up there with food, air, water. And as much as I like to stay in the house, we still need human connection. We need those things to survive.
Yeah, no child left behind, right? Like I remember when in the third grade my kid was struggling in math because I came from the 80s and 90s, right? So I was like, he was struggling with math. I was like, oh, it's not looking very good. I asked the principal, I was like, can he flunk? Can he flunk it?
Right,
Right?
right.
And she's like, what are you talking? No, we don't do that. I'm like, you don't. And in my head, I'm like, we don't do that. No, I'm talking about my. I was specifically talking about my kid, but we don't do that. It's like we don't flunk kids. No child left behind. We're so busy pouring money into prison systems and AI and stuff, but yet we have a hiring freeze of teachers in our school district that needs them. Second largest school district in America, and we can't hire teachers because we're broke. It is outrageous, right? And like, these kids that are being passed on, and you've kept these kids that are of color that are disproportionately disciplined in the US, that are getting expulsions and suspensions, that just leads to increased dropout rates. It just, the lack of motivation, but yet you're still getting passed on with no counselors, no mental health support, no one supporting these kids. It is all interconnected. This is not prison systems operating on its own. It's not just schools operating on their own or AI on its own, right? It's all interconnected. It's all working together. And here we are.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue for our next podcast. And before I go into that, I just really quickly want to make a personal statement to everybody who is listening when I was talking about my brother and forgiveness. I want everyone to know I'm a very flawed human. There's a lot of areas in my life where I have not been able to feel forgiveness. I don't want anyone to think that there's any judgment or that anyone needs to feel a certain way. If you're angry and you just want to tear the world apart, I get it. I do, and I just wanted to say that because I feel like there's so much like polarizing nowadays and people pointing fingers at each other. We're human. We're allowed to be human, and we're allowed to feel how we feel about the reactions to things happening to us in the world. So I just want to say that to everyone.
100%.
But we'd also like to pose this question to our listeners for part 5 of this podcast series. How is the current education system in our country impacting the lives of the children you love? And how might it be better if we put best practices in human development and a child-centered approach above money when it comes to education? Think about this and join us, please, for part 5 of the podcast series. Robin, you want to take us out with some facts above feelings?
Listen, I think that AI discussion pretty much sums up how I feel, but I will say this. We are in a time where every decision has an impact, a ripple effect that you could not even imagine. And when it comes to the prison system, yes, we do need to make sure that people pay the price for the crime. However, when you have people who are waiting years, robbed of time with their family, that's a problem. Let's deal with the situation head on. We are all human beings. We as a society need to be able to have an opportunity to allow them to reemerge and to be better and to do better. And so I want you to understand that we are not saying, okay, it's just a free for all and everybody should be free. That is not what we are saying. But we are saying that there are a lot of people who are behind bars for things that don't match the time that they are given. And so we have to be open to deciding how we handle people who are placed in a position that and sometimes is out of their control, right? And it could be your sister, it could be your cousin, it could be your dad, it could be your little nephew, it could be so many people. And we all deserve an opportunity. So I just hope that whoever's listening to this, whether prison has affected you directly, whether you're afraid to go to prison, whether you believe that everybody's there, who is there, should be there and should stay there forever, I want you to challenge yourself. I want you to listen to some stories. I want you to not just listen to a true crime podcast, right? Because that's not the whole trajectory of everyone. We are a flawed people, and we at the end of the day, we all deserve to live, to be in healthy environments, and to be shown decency. I hope that everybody who listened to this got something from it, can share it with someone who can get something from it, and that you'll come back for part 5, because I promise you it'll be worth it. Thank you all so much, and until next time, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Frame Initiative podcast. You can email us at info@beyondtheframeinitiative.com and receive a free facts over feeling sheet and more helpful links at our website. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast, and we'll see you soon. All voices, images, and visual content in this podcast are the original work of the hosts. Unauthorized use, including voice cloning, synthetic media generation, and deepfakes, is strictly prohibited and violates our intellectual property rights and right of publicity.